Right. The next question is about undercover policing, and it's in the name of Assemblymember Jones.
This is exclusively to Mr. Mayor.
Oh, thank you. I think that the use of undercover police officers is absolutely vital, and you will appreciate that there are a great many cases where Londoners have been protected by the activities of undercover police officers, and I'm sure that where undercover police officers are retained after for whatever contact they've had with members of the public, or authorised or unauthorised, where those officers have been retained, that is because it's thought that they are nonetheless pursuing the highest possible standards, and we will continue to ensure that they do.
I want you to fast forward, okay, because Theresa May has promised an inquiry, judge-led inquiry into undercover police officers, and supposing it happens in 2, 3, 4 years' time, and you are called as ex-PCC for London to give evidence, are you going to be able to give the evidence that they want to hear? For example, will you be able to tell them how many of the 4 officers that were looked at by the Hearn inquiry were still employed by the Met under your supervision?
I see no reason why I should not be able to give that information if that's the information that would be required in that hypothetical.
Okay, and will you be able to tell the public inquiry how many of the officers still employed faced sanctions for their behaviour?
If that, you're talking about some sort of imaginary future here, as I understand it.
Well, not really. I'm imagining at some point the judge-led inquiry might happen, and if it does, you will be asked to give evidence. You see, what I want you to say is that you're actually seeking assurances that if officers have actually gone against what the Commissioner, what you have said, in fact, I mean, I can quote you both, you've said sexual relationships should not occur on any undercover deployment. Now, they clearly did. And some of these officers are probably still employed. Have you sought assurances from the Met that these officers are not engaged in further undercover operations?
No.
Look,
I think the assurances I've sought is that the officers concerned have not been engaged in any unethical or unprofessional behaviour, and I think that's what we're talking about.
What I'm trying to get at is that you've got these rules, I understand, that officers should not engage in sex with targets when they're undercover. There are these rules, and yet none of the officers has actually been sanctioned. Well, what's the point of having rules if there's no punishment if you break them? I mean, that is the whole concept of policing, surely, that you catch people who break the rules, and yet police officers seem to be exempt from this.
Well, I think that when you speak of these rules, I'm sure that if insofar as they exist, they have been properly upheld. If there are still officers, I'd be very surprised if there are officers who remain employed as undercover officers who have been found to have behaved unethically or not in accordance with the rules.
Are you seeking assurances from the Met that no undercover officers are currently permitted to engage in sexual relationships with their targets?
The Commissioner has been very clear that that is not permitted. An undercover officer, a member of the public, must not and should not engage in sexual contact.
But do you take my point that if there's no sanctions for such behaviour, there's nothing to stop people doing it, is there?
As I say, this is, to the best of my knowledge, and obviously I will take steps to satisfy myself further on this point. To the best of my knowledge, there is nobody employed as an undercover officer who is guilty of unethical behaviour or who has been convicted of unethical behaviour. Now, there are there are many different. I would imagine there are many different interpretations of what may or may not have taken place between these officers and members of the public. But as far as I understand the matter,
there must have been sex in some cases because there
is no suggestion that
I'm making an assumption.
Any of them still employed as undercover officers have been engaged in disreputable or unethical behaviour.
Chairman, I'm just trying to help. First of all, in terms of the allegations, then if you remember, then Operation Hearn is running. And Operation Hearn is led by the Chief Constable of Derbyshire, Mick Creedon. So he is investigating these allegations about sexual contact. And some of the people who the allegations against have left the Met, but some do remain with us. Now, when those investigations are concluded, which are overseen by the four strands of which are overseen by the IPCC, then a conclusion will be reached about whether they should be criminally charged or there should be levels of misconduct. Now, you've probably seen in the press that there were 4 officers where the CPS decided there would be no criminal charges recently, but misconduct charges are still being considered. So that process will work its way through. Can I just complete this, Jenny, and then I'll take questions, of course.
Yeah,
the second point...
The Green Group are out of time, so we won't be able to put supplements.
Well, this is a vital point, which is that no officers are subject to allegations that are subject to allegations of crime or misconduct in relation to these investigations are still employed in undercover roles.
Which is what I said.
Right. Thank
well,
you.
sort of.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, I was only trying to help in terms of clarity because these are...
That's it.
This is an operational thing for which I think I'm properly responsible, and I'm only trying to provide information which I thought may help.